I wanted to shoot this video because this just happened and it's so extraordinary, even in my over 25 years experience in representing clients before the IRS, that I just had to tell the story. So I'm representing a corporate client. The corporation owes some money to the IRS. It's a mixture of payroll tax, unemployment tax, and corporate income tax because it's a C Corp. And we were working with the revenue officer, and the plan all along was to pay the balances off because that is one solution to IRS problems that we rarely talk about, is that you can just pay your liability and then you don't have a problem anymore. And so when a revenue officer that we were working with, and a revenue officer is a local person at the IRS whose job is to get the money from the taxpayer. We were working with this revenue officer and she issued a final notice of intent to levy. Now, the final notice of intent to levy is important because you have 30 days to appeal it. And if you do not appeal it, the IRS can, and often does, levy bank accounts, seize assets, and that type of thing from the taxpayer, both personal and business. And so in this case, she had issued a final notice of intent to levy. I filed what's called a request for collection due process hearing, which is an appeal. And the strategy really there was to just get enough time for this corporate taxpayer to just full pay the liability and put it behind them. So yesterday, the client faxed all the receipts that not only were the past bills paid, but even they're completely caught up and they have no liabilities that they owe the IRS. And so we faxed that information to the appeals officer in anticipation of our hearing today. And when I called the appeals officer, first of all, I thought that the hearing would be canceled because there really wasn't anything to talk about anymore. There was no balances due. But I called the appeals officer at the appointed time and hour, and the phone doesn't work. This is not super common, but it's not super uncommon. And so my practice over the years has always been to fax them immediately, because I have had a case 20 years ago or so where same issue, their phones didn't work and they ended up writing it up as if I never called, which was not the case. So I've learned that I need to send a fax and get a fax confirmation. So about 10 minutes late, the appeals officer calls and says, "Yeah, I'm sorry about my phone not working. I use a different phone number." Now, did she provide that phone number to us, to the taxpayer, to anybody? If we're to be held to the standard of we have to call them at the appointed time and hour, how can we call them if they're using a phone number that no longer works and they've not provided the correct phone number? So that's not really what the point of the video is, because I can get past that. Okay. Because the IRS does use antiquated technology and it just never seems to work out for them in terms of technology. But the woman started to talk and I indicated to her, "Look, I don't really think we need to have a hearing. I said, they don't owe any money." When she says, "Sir," this is the point of the video, by the way. She says, "Sir, here in appeals, we don't care if the taxpayer is paid or not." And I said, "Excuse me?" She says, "Yeah, that's not our job. We don't care if they've paid or not. We just need to look at the paperwork and see." She didn't really finish this thought, but she said something like, "We just need to look at the paperwork and make sure that the IRS did their job." Now, I would agree with her if we were having what's called a cap appeal, which is super procedural, and their job is just to make sure that all the administrative procedures were followed. But in this case, we were doing what's called a collection due process hearing, and you have a right to appeal this appeal to tax court if there's an abuse of discretion. So I inquired further. I said, "Oh, that's really very interesting. So, is it your position that you're going to sustain the levy notice if there's no balance due?" And what that would mean is the IRS could levy on the taxpayer when they didn't owe any money. And she says, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, that's fascinating. Okay." And then she backed up and she said, "No, if there's no balance due, then actually, she didn't back up then. She left it like that." I said, "Okay." She says, "There's still a balance due." I said, "Okay, tell me about it." She says, "It's a 940 for 2022. I said, "Okay." I'm looking at the fax that we sent you yesterday, and it's right there it's right there on page 4 of 8. It says that she paid $814.44. I don't have that. I said, "Okay, I'm not really clear on why things have become so difficult with the IRS lately. How many pages of fax do you have?" "I have 6. "Okay. It's an 8-page fax." "Oh, no, I have another one." "Okay. No, it's not on there." So now I'm losing my patience. because we're 10 minutes into a hearing that really shouldn't even happen. And long story short, she eventually found the facts that showed that the payment had been made, and she agreed that she was not going to sustain the levy notice. And that's a good result. The point of my video here is that how in the world is an average taxpayer supposed to navigate this system? They call a phone number, the call doesn't go through. Does your average taxpayer have a fax machine at their house? The average taxpayer hasn't seen a fax machine in 20 years. So I I just tell the story so that you can get some kind of idea of how difficult it can be to navigate through the bureaucracy of the IRS. And in this case, it was actually sheer, that's what this is. It's sheer incompetence. The IRS doesn't care if they collect the money that's the balance due. What are they going to do to you after you pay the money? I don't know. I was actually interested to find out. That would not have been a good result for my client, so I didn't get to find out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. If you have any questions about this or really anything else that has to do with IRS issues, why don't you visit our website at getirshelp.com.